Welcome to this introduction to Alma configuration. In this session, we will present two main topics: the configuration process in Alma and its various stages, and Alma's approach to fulfillment configuration. Today's presentation is followed by another session on the topic of the Alma configuration form, in which fulfillment configuration plays a large role. Today's session will provide you with useful background for that session. Alma is designed to be highly configurable and able to fit the needs of a very diverse customer base. Many parameters in Alma contain default values, which have been selected to reflect our best practice recommendations for most libraries. You may want to customize at least some of these parameters to meet your own needs. As such, configuration of Alma is included as part of the project plan. The configuration process actually begins with the creation of libraries and locations in Alma during the migration of data from your legacy system. A location in Alma can be considered the equivalent of a shelving location, or a collection of materials in a given library, whether shelved together or not. Circulation desks, acquisitions departments, and internal processing departments, for example, are not considered locations in Alma. Each library has one or more locations. The migration form presents an opportunity to map your existing locations into Alma libraries and locations. For Alma customers, Alma libraries are created from the Olive sublibraries, and Alma locations are created from the Olive collections. Libraries and locations play a central role in fulfillment in Alma, as we will discuss later in this presentation. An awareness of this role can help you make more informed decisions when completing your migration form. Note that libraries and locations are migrated only once. As stated, many parameters in Alma contain default values. This helps reduce the amount of configuration required. Default values are contained in the configuration form, and non-default values are highlighted to assist you in completing the form. The next step in the configuration process is the configuration form. The configuration form is the primary tool for initial configuration. After libraries and locations have been created during migration, the configuration form allows you to customize parameters related to fulfillment, acquisitions, resource management, and more. The customizations you make in the form will be configured in Alma by your Ex Libris team. The options available in the form reflect our best practice recommendations. Detailed instructions for completing the form are contained in a separate document which you should receive from your Ex Libris team. A copy of the configuration form containing sample data to better illustrate how to complete the form is also included. A separate presentation is dedicated to the configuration form. After the initial customization of Alma according to your configuration form, modifications to the configuration may be made via the Alma user interface. After your institution has completed Alma certification training, you will be able to make these modifications yourself. In the meantime, changes can be requested from your Ex Libris implementation team. As you test the system and provide feedback, your Ex Libris team will continue making any necessary adjustments to the configuration. Although the configuration form contains most of the configurations you will need before going live with Alma, you will likely want to make additional configurations before going live. A list of these configurations with reference to the relevant sections in the online help, is contained in the customer guide document which accompanies the configuration form. Fulfillment is a major part of the necessary configuration in Alma, and this is reflected in the configuration form, where most of the tabs in the form are related to fulfillment. This part of our session will serve as background to the next session, which focuses on the configuration form. Alma's approach to fulfillment is different than in traditional ILS systems. Traditionally, fulfillment has been handled on an item-level basis. Each and every item receives a status or policy which, together with the patron status, is used to construct a matrix of applicable loan policies for each item based on its status, for example, due date, overdue fine, renewability, etc. Alma takes a location-based approach to fulfillment, the assumption being that items which are shelved in the same location circulate in more or less the same way for a given user group. In the event of an exception to this assumption, Alma can use the item status in order to define exceptional circulation policies. All other items will circulate according to the policies defined for their location, without reference to item status. By managing fulfillment on the location level, it is no longer necessary to maintain an item status on each and every item. On the contrary, the item level status should be maintained only on exceptional items, that is, items which circulate in a way which is exceptional to the majority of items in the location. This approach is easier to configure and maintain, thus lowering operating costs. In addition, defining fulfillment policies according to location makes it easier for patrons to understand the terms of use, reducing confusion and misunderstanding. Typically, a library has several different types of locations, for example, open stacks, course reserves, media, etc., each with its own circulation policies. Alma gathers all the locations of a given type in all the libraries of the institution into what we call a fulfillment unit. A fulfillment unit is simply a list of all locations of the same type. And, since locations of the same type contain items which circulate the same way, a fulfillment unit actually contains all the items in all the libraries which circulate the same way. You can have several different fulfillment units, one for each location type. Here we see a screenshot of the fulfillment units created in Alma. And here we see the limited type locations, which have been gathered together into the limited fulfillment unit. Notice that locations of the same type, albeit from different libraries, are included in the fulfillment unit. A fulfillment unit also contains rules, which will be applied to the items in each of the locations listed in the fulfillment unit. These rules determine the circulation policies which will be applied to all the items in that fulfillment unit. Fulfillment rules define a certain scenario and determine the circulation policies, or terms of use, which will be applied to that scenario. For example, a patron with user group faculty wants to borrow a book from the limited stacks location. Here we see a screenshot of a fulfillment rule in Alma. The middle section describes the scenario or input parameters of the rule. In this case, a patron with user group faculty or staff. The bottom section of the screen defines the terms of use which will be applied to a loan in this scenario. Here are the policies or terms of use which will be applied to this loan. The left column lists each of the policy types which relate to any loan. For example, whether the item is loanable, what the due date is, overdue fine, etc. The right column contains the specific values for each policy type, which will apply to this loan. Just as we have rules and terms of use for loans, so too for requests. Here we see the policies which apply to a request. For example, whether the item may be requested, where the requested item may be picked up, and how long it will be kept on the hold shelf. Fulfillment units typically contain several different rules, each one defining a different scenario and the terms of use that will be applied in that scenario. These scenarios usually make reference to the patron's user group. Rules can also make reference to item status, in case you have items which circulate differently than the majority of items in that location. In this presentation, we learned about two different but related topics. First, that configuration in Alma is a process. The process begins with the migration of libraries and locations. Libraries and locations are central to fulfillment configuration in Alma. Many parameters in Alma contain default values, which represent best practice recommendations for most libraries. The configuration form allows you to customize Alma to suit your specific need and is the main tool for initial configuration. Adjustments to the configuration will be made based on your testing and feedback. After you have gone live with Alma and participated in certification training, you will be able to make configuration modifications yourself directly in the Alma user interface. In the meantime, your Ex-Libris team will make modifications based on your feedback. Finally, there are additional configurations not included in the configuration form, which you will want to make in Alma before going live. The second point we discussed today is that fulfillment configuration in Alma is location-based, the assumption being that items which are in the same location circulate under more or less the same policies. Locations of the same type are associated with a fulfillment unit. And finally, the fulfillment unit contains rules which define scenarios and the policies which will be applied to those scenarios. Typically, scenarios are defined according to user group. For exceptions, scenarios may also be defined by item status. In the next session, we will learn in depth about the configuration form and how to complete it. Thank you.